Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining us at FOFS 2020, partnered with CBC this year, bringing you our selection. Today, we have Scott Fitzpatrick, who is the director of Fifth Metacarpal Redux. And we're just going to have a 20 to 30-minute conversation about Scott, less about Fifth Metacarpal, honestly, more about how it fits into, Scott, your filmography, and the direction that you're interested in even approaching your future. So I'm interested specifically if you could initially talk about your introduction to animation, the process of perhaps if it was self-learned and how you began to essentially really perfect at least the texture that you were primarily interested in, and how that went into creating works with fonts and webdings.
Sure, yeah. So I guess I can say that I came to short filmmaking through kind of an immersion in the local Winnipeg film scene, particularly the experimental film scene. Actually, funnily enough, after having worked on what eventually became the Forbidden Room
Okay.
pieces and Keyhole and kind of the Guy Madden projects around 2010, 2011, and I was on a project that he was doing. Yeah, at the time it was called the Hauntings Project, then it became the Seances, and then the feature became the Forbidden Room. And on that set, got to meet a lot of the Winnipeg experimental film kids that Guy got involved on that project. So met like Clint Enns and Mike Marinick, Matthew Rankin, Aaron Zegers, Reen Vermette, Heidi Phillips. I met like everybody in town was kind of involved in this project in some capacity. So I really was kind of head first thrown into this film scene, and at the end of it, I just remember Mike Marinick saying particularly like, "Do you know what the one take Super 8 is? You have to make a one take. You have to do a one take film." And I was like, "I don't even know what that is, but okay." And the one take, for folks who don't know, it's a kind of a structuralist, formalist film making event that a number of cities host, and Winnipeg's had one for the last 14 years. Through the Windex Festival, and you just shoot a film on a single 3-minute cartridge of Super 8 film, and whatever you get in the can, that's your movie, and it screens as is. It's a really fun event, and so I made one then, and just kind of, it was that year, I made a really good one, actually, not like my first one-take Super 8 film was like, it's kind of like a classic of the Winnipeg one-takes now, and it was just really cool to get to show at this particular screening as a total unknown, nobody knew who I was, along with like Deco Dawson and Clint Enns and Leslie Supnett and all these folks who were like fairly well-established filmmakers in the scene, and then not only getting to show at the same time, but being like, whoa, I'm like, I can compete kind of in this arena, and I'm a kind of competitive person by nature, and there's a lot of that built into the Winnipeg film scene, and so kind of just took off from there. And from there, I just started stealing everything that I like from all of those contemporaries. So kind of stealing some specific handmade animation techniques from Mike Marinick, who I mentioned already. He has a really incredible film called Tattoo Step that was really, really important for me. It's in direct animation on 35mm film, and it's just using a whole bunch of temporary tattoos stuck onto clear 35 that you like bleach down. I think it's a bleach down trailer, and it's temporary tattoos, and it kind of takes on this brackage quality, but it's also got that that DPI, that Ben Ray dot kind of pattern that you see in some of my stuff with the laser printed stuff. And also I tried to emulate, maybe arguably still am emulating a little bit, Clint Enns and his work, and particularly his really short, kind of like very critical video works that really resonated with me. And so in Tattoo Step, in Mike's film, he has this, like I said, it's all temporary tattoos, just direct animated onto the film plane, but he inkjet printed his credits. So it just says Mike Marinick, and it's his like high school yearbook photo. And I was like, what's that? That's cool. And he told me I just cut up some film and ran it through an inkjet printer, and it looks pretty bad. But I was like, oh, that's something I would like to try and feel like I could maybe lean into a bit and try with like a bit more ambition. And so yeah, the first film I made with that technique was called For Magicians. It was for a workshop, and it was really just kind of like getting my feet wet with the technique. And then from then on out, I started the Wingding series, which became 3 films, which ended up also becoming a performance, and also made FAG in there. And I think in the end, I've got maybe now, I don't know, maybe like 15 to 20 laser print films or laser printed projects. And it's been cool for me because I've been able to work out like a pretty refined technique for it, and it's kind of become like a stamp or like a signature of mine, at least in my early film work. I've managed to kind of like stake a claim to this technique, which is kind of funny because it's like, it's in no way something that I've come up with. Like I say, I stole it from Mike Marinick, and tons of other folks have done this before. I'm not the first, not going to be the last to play with printing onto film. Roger Beebe has a really excellent dual channel laser printed film called TBTX Dance that I think that's a 2008 film, and it's really, really good. Like really, it's as good as any of my best ones. Really, really killer film. But he only ever made the one. He's used some of that technique into some of his performance work, but I kind of made a point of being like, let's see how much space I can make with this out of this gesture, and rather than just doing it once, because it's kind of like a workshopy technique almost, in a way. But so that's kind of how I was introduced to animation, and I've had some like animations come up, I guess, in bigger and smaller ways in some of my other work. I've done some single frame Super 8 animation stuff, some other forms of direct animation that look really similar to the laser printing but are different. Yeah.
No, thank you very much. And I guess that's a good way to transition into essentially your more contemporary works moving away. What I was noticing, at least of the films that I was able to see, was with Fifth Metacarpal, there's a rather brash turn into like the transparency of something personal. Where like the films previously that I was privy to, the more high conceptual pieces, especially in the way in which they transition to the formal presentation. But with Fifth Metacarpal, even like with Trigger Warning, there's like a very raw emotionality that you present in this incredibly transparent, and with Fifth Metacarpal, a very humorous way. So
Thanks,
I mean,
yeah. Yeah, I'm glad you think Fifth Metacarpal is funny. It's like supposed to be funny, so I appreciate that. Yeah, it's definitely the most personal film I've made. Just in an obvious way, it's just about me. I've figured into my work a bunch in the past. Like I'm like physically on camera in a lot of my stuff. Like the first screen test is a shot of me. I'm in Zombie. I'm in my first film Down. I'm in a handful of them. I'm in How to Talk to. I'm in a bunch of my own films, and so like that's always been present, but nothing like diaristic or personal in that way. So and I'm not sure how much that's a mode I want to keep working in. I don't know. Like I don't think of myself as a diaristic filmmaker. Mostly I just had that piece of writing that I think just kind of like needed to be a movie, and it started off as a piece of writing that I really liked, and just was like, oh, it'll have to be a movie at some point. So I'd like to think that maybe at a point my films could do that, like that kind of where they're kind of personal, like you're doing personal things and like you're bringing as much of your voice into it as you feel is necessary, but it's also not just like diary films.
Yeah, which could be something projected with the way in which I assume it might be your arm. Your arm is in fact the subject of Fifth Metacarpal.
Like,
so
yeah, I mean it's about my hand. The actual arm getting casted in the movie is not my hand though.
Okay.
Yeah, that's just a YouTube video.
So it's a found footage film?
There's a lot of found footage in it. Yeah. There's a mix. Like there's a lot of stuff that I've shot myself, and then a lot of found footage. I've kind of like, I really like. I mean, everybody uses found footage. All the experimental filmmakers I know, at least all the interesting ones, are using found footage in some way. But I like not everybody talks about it very gracefully all the time. I liked how I heard Mike Holblin describe his use of found footage recently. He was just talking about how like I use found footage because there's so many images out in the world. I don't need to make more. Like why invest the money and the energy to make this new image when like it obviously already exists. So like yeah, I had thought about going for that shot in Fifth Metacarpal. I thought about going to a clinic and like paying to have a cast put on, but like even if you're paying for that, like a doctor's not gonna entertain that because I guess you're not paying for their time and shit. Like there, it's just it would be so much more work. And I was like, oh, it's probably online, and of course it is. And like there's a lot of stuff that I don't need to shoot that's just available, and you can just recontextualize it. Yeah. There's another funny found footage shot in that movie that actually brought a layer to the work that I didn't even know was in there. It was so nice. I showed Fifth Metacarpal at EMAF, the European Media Art Festival, and I met a filmmaker, Jordan Wong, who I guess I'm kind of outing here, but I don't think he'd mind. But he asked me after he was like, the two guys kissing in that. He's like, that's Brent Corrigan, right? And I was like, huh? I don't know. I never really thought about it too hard. I literally YouTube searched gay kiss and was like, perfect. This is enough. This is all I need. And I'd never even honestly really done too much even consideration of like who's in the shot. And it turns out it's this porn actor, Brent Corrigan, who famously performed underage for a number of years with forged documents. And actually like at the time of that he's in that, he's probably 16. So it was really, really funny. Yeah, and yeah, I was like, well, I wouldn't have got that if I'd shot it myself.
No, that's great. That's the serendipity there is hilarious and fitting. I'd like to move into, I guess, music specifically, because I mean, when I was first looking at Fifth Metacarpal for FOFS, I friended you on Facebook, and the one thing I consistently seen is your sort of very open invitations to have people come hear you live stream like a DJ set. And then obviously with Metacarpal in its initial version and not the Redux that we're showing, you have the song Jet Boy, Jet Girl. And so I'm interested in how prominent it plays specifically, but how also the emotionality that you get from just having your voiceover in that film, so, as this monotone, but then we're hit with that music. So I'd like to actually ask you about your passion for music and your transition, your use of that within your filmmaking.
Yeah, for sure. That's a great question. Thanks, Ed. It's not one that I'm used to getting. I'm like a huge music nerd. I am just a music obsessive. I spend all of my free time basically just digging through like physical record stores or digital record stores, or it's like definitely an obsessive thing, and it's come out in my work a lot. I used pop music right out of the gate in my films, just kind of as like a this sounds cool kind of like this, I like this song for my thing, like why not kind of way. Which for young emerging filmmakers especially, I say do that. Like anybody who goes and finds free music to use is just like, oh, like no one has ever liked any free music, so just take something you like. I don't get it. So I used a lot of particular, and I used to use kind of like a reflexive, like, well, if Kenneth Anger could do it in his melodramas, like why can't I as a structural filmmaker? And part of me still agrees with that.
No, like, I mean, right, like Michael Snow has the Beatles playing in every theater that shows Wavelength.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, who knows?
Yeah, but then after having done like an open call review for a film festival for the last decade-ish, I've seen a lot of pop music used inartfully too. So like it can also be the clumsiest thing in the world. So I'm kind of moving further away from when I use pop music in a film, like for example with Fifth Metacarpal, or Fifth Metacarpal Redux, which even though Jet Boy Jet Girl's not in the movie, it's still a presence in the movie. I would want to make sure that there's like a reason to be using it, that the music is like particularly because like I say, I'm trying to move into this more kind of essayistic phase. So I think the music has to like be part of the essay, or it probably shouldn't be there, at least for where I'm at now. And then yeah, the other story going on through my whole practice has been just that like I've always would much rather be a DJ or a musician than I would like to be a filmmaker. I just have never really had much of like a instrumental kind of musical ability. I've never been very good at that. Yeah, so music is always present. The other kind of like the other recent essayistic film that I've got out is Zombie Part 1, and I'm working on the sequel to that, and music features in that a lot, particularly disco and Donna Summer. And so yeah, yeah, just obsessed with pop music. And even in fifth there's the Fiona Apple quote and the car seat headrest quotes, and so yeah, I like films about music. Some of my favorite films in recent memory too have been films like either about music or that like engage with this music kind of essay thing.
No, completely. I'd like to just touch on something you passed over in that. I'd like to talk about your work in the festival circuit, like your work as program coordinator at Windex, your work with Gimli, your work. I believe when you started working, was it with the Winnipeg Underground Film Festival? That was sort of was that your first sort of big like go into the festival world?
In 2012, Aaron Zeggers, a contemporary and friend of mine, and Travis Cole, likewise, founded a group called Open City Cinema. That was kind of like a floating screening collective. We just showed stuff that we could show for free or that we could steal, and in like DIY art spaces. And after doing that for about a year and a half, we founded WOOF. We did the first Winnipeg Underground Film Festival, and I've been kind of at the helm of that for the past 8 years. I just handed that off to a couple other filmmakers in Winnipeg. Megan Elizabeth Diamond and Alyssa Bourne are now the directors at WOOF, and I've stepped over. I'm now directing the other film festival in town, the Windex Festival of Moving Image, and I'm just going into my second year with Windex. But yeah, I really love programming short films. I think that is another way in which my practice comes back to just being a music nerd and like a DJ at heart. I just am obsessed with making playlists and mixtapes, and I find a similar kind of pleasure from assembling short film programs, and so it's something that I think that'll always be part of my practice going forward is programming other people's work. Increasingly now, it's a bigger part of my practice than making my own work.
No, I was going to, because I like that you bring that up, that it relates very much to your affinity for music, because I was going to ask if your years of programming have also had influence or have had influence on your own work.
Yeah, definitely. And in lots of ways, I would say, like, I mean, anytime I get asked the question of like, what advice do you have for emerging filmmakers? It's always watch more. Just like, even if you think you're watching a lot, watch more, like a lot more. And it'll inform you in all kinds of ways. So yeah, it's going to film festivals, even if you can't go, looking up programs and seeing what you can see online. Especially if you live in not like a major metropolitan art center, like if you don't live in Toronto or LA or New York or something, like if you live in Winnipeg and you don't have access to historical experimental films or even contemporary experimental films, like I said, the Windex Festival has always been around as I've come up, but like to be able to see experimental films once a year and be at the whim of whoever's programming that festival that year, in terms of what you get to see, is you end up like uneducated on the scene, so it's like see as much as you can and like steal stuff. And yeah, I doing the open call has informed my work immensely.
No, definitely. No, I mean, unfortunately, honestly, we've kind of hit the time. We're looking for 20 to 30 minutes for these, but no, I mean, Scott, thank you very much for joining, for giving us your words and your perspective, and a little bit of your history too.
Yeah, and thanks for dealing with me and workshopping fifth Metacarpal Redux.
No, I'm really happy to be able to have it on CBC. I'm happy to be able to have, you know, all of Canada. I mean, it's not like not that they weren't already privy to it via your Vimeo, but I'm happy to program it. I really
Yeah,
am.
it's exciting. I think a whole bunch of people who probably wouldn't have seen it otherwise are going to get to see it. So I
Yeah,
appreciate you covering
no,
it.
no, definitely, hopefully. So, no, thank you so much, Scott. And I hope you have a wonderful night.
You too. Thanks.
Thank you.
Cheers.